I know it's convenient to be on Zoom, but we do want to see everybody so that we know that you're here. And again, I just want to reiterate, if you are at work or you are otherwise engaged in something else, we would rather talk to you outside of this about your interest in participating. I know we have 54 people on our call, which is amazing and exciting. And we want to make sure that each of you has a positive experience. Training for our mental health ambassadors is really important. We know it's a lot of time, and we're going to talk more about what that time commitment is. But we do want you to get out of it what we need you to get out of it, so that if you do decide to apply to be a mental health ambassador, you have all the knowledge and skills that you need in order to represent the organization and advocate for mental health on campus. I am super proud of the mental health ambassadors, and this is the fourth fall and fourth round of our training, which is really hard to believe. We've grown a lot and come a long way. The first training that we do today, we call Mental Health Matters, and it's really a broad sweep about collegiate mental health. And we're going to talk about what we're seeing right now in our mental health of college students. We're going to talk about some things to think about and strategies to address mental health concerns, and then equip you with some resources as well. So the goal of today is for you to learn something, kind of like a workshop would be, content-wise about mental health, but also hopefully you'll get something out of it personally too. I think that's something that our mental health ambassadors give us feedback about and can attest to, that they learn as much themselves for their own mental health practices and self-care, as well as teaching other people. And that's really part of the goal. We want you to be able to learn and grow yourself as well. You don't have to apply to be a mental health ambassador. You can come to any of our trainings that you want to and invite your friends. And so we are an open, inclusive group and welcome anyone who wants to learn more about mental health. So I am going to share my screen, and while I do that, I'll tell y'all just a little bit more about who I am and what I do on campus. That didn't share my screen. That just started my slide presentation. Let's see. Before I do that, I think I'll tell you a little bit about myself while you can see me a little better. So I am Director of Student Counseling Services. I have been at UAB a long time. It is my career really has been here at UAB, aside from a little jaunt at another school for just a few years. I started here as a staff counselor out of my doctoral program back in the day, we'll say it's been 20 years ago. And in our role, we are here at Student Counseling Services to support student mental health on campus. I'm going to give you a nice little overview of the different services that we provide. I think what's really important to know is that while the most common thing that people think of with student counseling services or counseling support is that counseling session where you are talking with a counselor and working on strategies to address whatever concerns or whatever goals that you have for that particular time in your life. And we definitely do that. The other thing that we really work hard to do, and why mental health ambassadors is so important, is to provide a lot of education and raise awareness and equip people with tools so that they can have positive mental health experiences, and they can also support and encourage others to have positive mental health experiences and get on the front end of mental health concerns when at all possible, or be able to identify when something is becoming a more difficult concern so that they can get help early, and be able to just get right back on that path of life and achieving your goals. All right, so here we go. And I absolutely invite you to comment. I'm able to see your comments, so Dr. Lindsay's going to help watch those so that we can both tag team and be here together with you. And if you have comments, if you have questions, if there's something that I need to repeat, or you just want to say that makes sense to me, then that is absolutely appropriate for what we're doing. All right, there we go. And I want to start this. All right, can y'all see the title slide? Yes, yes. Thank you for the head nods. All right, now I have hidden all of you from view, which I do not like, but I do need to be able to see my slides. I may be able to show you here in just a minute, at least a little bit. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do, this is an exercise to help us just all get present. We're all in different places all over the place, but we are sharing this virtual space together. And so what I'd like for you to do is called a brain dump. We're going to take 60 seconds. You can use your phone or a scrap piece of paper, but I want you to put down everything that is on your mind right now. So maybe it's your grocery list, or it's the homework that you have, or the test that you have tomorrow, or it's plans for the weekend, or conversation that you had yesterday, whatever it might be. I want you to just write that list. I'm going to keep a timer for 60 seconds and dump it all out, either on a piece of paper or in your phone or somewhere. We're not going to share it with each other. This is for your exercise. So I'm going to go ahead and start the timer now for 60 seconds. All right. You may still have things on your mind. If your brain is anything like mine, then you probably just got started with everything that's going on. The point of this exercise is to just bring you to the present moment. There's a lot of things going on in our minds all the time, and we don't always have the opportunity to kind of pause. Being present is partly getting those distractions out of our minds. So I invite you to literally set your distractions over to the side. They're not going anywhere. You know, you'll still be able to get to those things in just a little bit. We're not going to throw them away or forget about them. But if you can set them over to the side, and for the next hour and 15 minutes or so, be here and no place else is kind of one way that I like to say that. All right. The next thing that we're going to do, I want to share with you, and we'll share more information about our UAB Well app if you haven't heard about it yet, but we're going to do another exercise that's going to help us just, again, focus and relax a little bit. And it's a deep breathing exercise, and I'm going to attempt to show a video that will guide us through that. And hopefully you'll be able to hear it. Can folks hear?
Not real well.
All right, let me increase that volume then. Okay. And is that any better?
Actually, that is worse. We could kind of hear it before. Now
You can't?
Mm-mm.
Okay, I'm going to do one more thing.
Okay.
And see if I can adjust this. It's always tricky with Zoom, and I know share sound. That's what I need to do. Okay. All right. I'm going to do this. And we're going to do this.
We're going to start by using a relaxation technique called square breathing. We'll begin by moving to a space where there is little noise or distraction. If possible, find a seat to sit in comfortably. Now that we are comfortable, we'll start by taking in a long, deep breath, inhaling for 4 seconds. Count them out as you're breathing. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now hold your breath in for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we exhale for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now let's hold our breath out for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now that we've completed the cycle, let's begin again. Breathe in for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. Breathe out for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. And hold out for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. You can repeat this process as many times as you need. Hopefully you'll notice that your heart rate has decreased and the anxiety has subsided.
All right. Thank you all for doing that and for bearing with me in my technical difficulties. This is one of many videos and exercises that's part of our UAB Well app. We have guided breathing, and we have a version of the square breathing exercise that doesn't have the instructions at the beginning. If you just want a guide, take a couple of minutes to slow down and take some deep breaths and have a guide for that. You can do that too. We also have some different meditations. There's some yoga, there's different mindfulness and grounding exercises. And so there's a lot of different ways that you can use the UAB Well app in the Finding Calm section of that. And I wanted to share that with you. My hope is that you were able to focus enough through that exercise to be able to notice some of the benefits that Franklin, who's one of our counselors that did the video, talked about, which is a slowing of your heart rate, a slowing of your breathing, relaxation of your body, maybe an awareness of your thoughts, and more of an awareness of your present space. My hope is that you were able to feel that. You're welcome to put any comments in the chat. Love to hear what that was like for you. I think both of these exercises are really helpful, and I always like to start presentations off with some kind of mindfulness exercise, because we don't get a lot of opportunity to do that, especially together. But these are things that you can do anywhere, anytime. They only take 60 seconds or a couple of minutes each, and they can actually do quite a bit to help you feel more present, to be more grounded, to relax a little bit, and to actually help your body be more able to show up right here and now in this space. All right. So we're going to goals are really simple. After my little part of this presentation, we're going to dig a little deeper into the next steps to becoming a mental health ambassador. So we're really going to talk about mental health, going to take a minute to talk about the role of self-compassion, and then some UAB resources. I love this particular meme. I have used it so much over the past couple of years. Just kind of recognizing where we are and that it's just hard right now. And people are going through a lot. So it's okay if it's hard to focus. It's okay if you're struggling to figure out what to do or how you are. It's okay if you aren't handling things perfectly. There's nothing wrong with you. It's a difficult situation. That's not your fault. There is a lot going on. As we go through this presentation, I'm hopeful that some of you will share when things resonate with you, some of the things that I've been hearing from students and colleagues actually already about how this semester feels to folks. I want to start by sharing a metaphor of the sandbar. The sandbar is an image that we came up with a couple of years ago in the midst of COVID to describe really a phase that we're in our time, in these times and in our life that we haven't been through before. There's been a lot of research in the past about disasters. When people go through disasters like a hurricane or flood or a tornado or a fire, and what those emotional phases are after someone experiences an impact event, something that is a life-changing kind of impact event. And we can really lay on top of this process much of what we've experienced in COVID. We have the phases of kind of the preparation, those of us that were catching on to the early COVID news that something was coming. Some people had more opportunity to prepare than others. We had the impact phase, which I think, for most of us is March time right before UAB spring break, or maybe wherever you were. That mid-March time when the world just, retreated and we all went into our homes and we stayed inside and away from other people for a long time. As that impact event happened and turned our worlds upside down, we can watch and see that the heroic phase where people just really rose to their best selves to make a difference and to help others who were in great need, whether that's sewing masks for people or supporting our first responders. People really did a lot to help their neighbors during that time. We have a honeymoon phase where you may remember feeling or kind of a sense of we're all in this together. So much was happening virtually and people were doing a lot for free. There were a lot of concerts. People were sharing what they were doing during their quarantine times. We were driving by to visit people. And there's a real sense of we're going to get through this together. But the phase of the honeymoon doesn't always last. And for some, and at different points in time, a disillusionment phase arose, which is really all the heroism and all the things that have been put in place and all the aids and all the help, they just aren't quite enough. And this is really hard. And things really didn't work for them or aren't working out for them the way that they need them to. And honestly, we haven't hit quite the recovery and rebuilding phase. I think we're starting to get into that. But that's a traditional phase model, emotional phase model of people going through a disaster. But we talked about this middle point where we were, that was a sandbar phase. And what that really meant, so think about it like the ocean of COVID, where we're all thrown into this ocean of COVID all together. We didn't know where we were. It was very disorienting. It was waters that we weren't familiar with. We weren't wearing life jackets, that's for sure. We were just swimming as hard as we could to figure out what we needed to do to make adjustments to live and to work and to take care of our families and to take care of ourselves and keep moving forward in a very, 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 very new way. But after a while, for some people that was weeks, for some it was months, there was a sense of getting used to the new way. I I felt it as touching bottom, but I wasn't on land yet. It's not like we were out of this and we had, gotten to shore. It's kind of a midpoint, which is what a sandbar is. It's in the middle of the ocean. It's still surrounded by water, but it is a place that's a little higher up where you can touch ground. We still lack control. There are new waves of COVID. We're still experiencing that, but there has been a coming to terms of a new reality. During different periods of time, we would go through really phases where not a lot of new was happening. There was no new news to share. I know conversations with my own family and my parents, it's like, yeah, it's the same as the last time I talked to you. We really aren't doing anything differently. There's really nothing else happening. There's nothing new to adjust to yet. But it's still this unfamiliar place that doesn't feel quite like our usual. So a level of acceptance, but also with that, for some, hitting a wall. Like I have had enough of this. I am hitting a wall, maybe being in a fog. I experienced that quite a bit, especially when working from home and doing so much virtually all the time that I lost track of time and my brain just didn't function the way that it normally did. And we'll talk a little bit about that. You can be bored even when you're busy because you're trapped and you're in the same space doing the same kind of thing. And there was a lot of prolonged isolation. And so that sense of being at the sandbar where you're regaining a little bit of control, but you're still not back to what you're used to. You're not quite as familiar. You're still having to exercise and have new strategies or do new things in new ways. And there's still a lot of unknown. There's also some unique factors of COVID that have impacted our mental health and how we respond that I want to mention because it is going to make sense if we think about why people may be experiencing what they are right now. It was very unique that everybody was in this disaster. Everybody in the world was in this disaster. Unlike a hurricane or a fire or a tornado where there's a destination point of the impact event and you can have outside help. People can come in and bring relief. There are others who weren't in that disaster who can bring their strength and their resources to help you. But we were all in it. And we were all in the ocean grabbing for help and pulling each other, trying to pull each other up while we're also in the water as well. The events that impacted people were multiple. It wasn't just one thing. So we have this umbrella of COVID, but we have everything from loss and change of jobs, change of homes, change of living environment. People were sick and people died. There was so much that happened during COVID that has impacted people, not to mention just the course of life events that we have, missed opportunities, life milestones that were experienced in ways that were very difficult and unexpected. And all of these happen at different times for different people. And so it's staggered. It's chronic because it's happened over the past 3 years that these events continue to happen and over and over and over again. And there's so many ways that people are impacted in things that happen. We saw and are continuing to see exposure of racial, economic, health, and social disparities. Whether that's access to healthcare or that's economic disparities, certainly social disparities, and a lot around race and racism that's happened. People can be in multiple phases at once. They can be getting along and doing okay and having a lot of hope, say in school, but then in their work life or maybe family life, there is somebody that is sick or somebody that may have been lost to COVID or some other impact event that happens so that people are kind of all over the place. The end of COVID is unknown. I think we can revise that to say there's really no end to COVID. It's a matter of figuring out how to move beyond the sandbar and living with COVID and how life is going to look differently. We won't be going back. So I share all that as a framework and a way for you to think about. Metaphors are always helpful just to give us something to visually and hang on to think about what we've gone through. There are so many responses to fear, anxiety, and stress that when you go through a disaster are all going to be part of that experience. So I want to just refer to this chart a little bit and go through some different things that maybe you went through, family members, friends, people that you know may have experienced physically. Some people may experience things more like a medical issue, go to the doctor. Got headaches, I've got high blood pressure, racing heart, sweating, GI issues. Had a lot of students reporting migraines over the past couple of years, more so than usual. And so our stress is absorbed in our bodies, and our bodies then take on all of that. And so it's going to show up for sure. Cognitively, think about our brains are on overdrive. We are having to create new neural pathways of situations and solve problems that we have never had before. And do you remember a time before COVID where you had to wonder if you'd be able to go to the grocery store and find basic needs like toilet paper, or have to worry about going to get gas and wearing a mask because you didn't know if you might get COVID, and you don't know how that might affect you because there's so much unknown. Like we don't have that in our memory, or we didn't before COVID. So your brain is working really, really, really hard to figure out how to adapt. Because of that, confusion, nightmares, uncertainty, easily startled, anger, poor problem solving, problems with attention, all of these things, disorientation of time, slowed learning speed, distorted thinking, decreased self-awareness, all of these things are very, very, very common and even expected. Think about how this impacts your ability to learn and to be in school when you're just trying to figure out day-to-day living and how to establish a routine, or how to learn online versus being in class. It really does affect our ability to do what we need to do. Emotionally, we hear a lot about, our mental health. And I think a lot of times we attach mental health to emotional and cognitive functioning, but fear and guilt, irritability, depression, grief, so much grief, denial, anxiety, agitation, feeling overwhelmed, can be extremes of feeling emotional or feeling nothing, that my emotions are right at my surface, and or I'm just, kind of numb to it all, feeling helpless and hopeless. Behaviorally, there's a lot to observe, and these are things that you might notice in others even more. Withdrawal, inability to rest, that just agitation, maybe constant movement, pacing, shaking the foot, changes in habits or behaviors like alcohol and drug consumption, increase or decrease in appetite, changes in libido, increase, decrease in sleep, maybe avoidance of things, or aggressiveness or outbursts in ways that are not typical to how you would behave. Again, going through stress, anxiety, and fear, where your body and your mind and your soul and everything about you is trying to adjust to something that has really just swept you off your feet. And there's a lot of uncertainty, of course, of the future involved too. A lot of what we're seeing and how this is showing up in our students and what we expect to continue to see, a lot of grief. So grief comes along with any kind of loss. So this can be the loss of a life, which I think is a lot of times the first thing we think of with grief. But it's the loss of opportunities. It's the loss of experiences. Maybe during COVID, you had a milestone birthday or graduation, or there was a family celebration that you're expected to have a certain way, and that just did not happen. And there is grief to that. We have a lot of students who started their freshman year in college in a really, really, really different way than they had expected to their whole lives. And so there's grief in some of that. Trauma, because of all the impact events that have happened, and we're going to talk a little bit more about trauma. All of the transition, the constant change, and it's not just change once, it's change chronically, like over time, constantly having to recalibrate, constantly having to have a backup plan and a backup plan to your backup plan. It's exhausting. We're still seeing a lot of financial impact, and this continues to probably be the number one stressor of students. Prolonged stress and anxiety and the impact that has on your body and on your mind and on your emotions. Long-term isolation and the impact on our students as well, and that feeling of really kind of being isolated or disengaged as much as they were prior to COVID, or more than prior to COVID. And then just an interruption in typical experiences that somebody might have in college because things are not the way that they've always been. And so having to do that very differently, including things of just living on your own, students that were used to doing that and then had to disrupt all of that and go back home into environments that they had been able to separate from or had learned to live independently from, and going back to that, or a delay of being able to leave and live independently as they had thought that they would. I'm going to pause in just a minute and ask for y'all to maybe comment just a little bit of the things that I've talked about, what resonates with you or what you've noticed in others. This is something that the apathy, disengagement, and exhaustion, I think, really became evident and apparent last spring. Seen some of that all along, but last spring marked 2 years of since we were kind of thrown off of our feet for COVID, and people are just tired. This quote, "I dream of never being called resilient again in my life. I'm exhausted by strength. I want support. I want softness. I want ease. I want to be amongst kin, not patted on the back for how well I take a hit, or how many." I heard this a lot of, "I'm really tired of talking about resilience. I'm tired of being told to be strong or to bounce back, or given information about resiliency skills. It's just, I'm tired." I don't know if that resonates with you. And this cartoon, "Come on in, sorry about the mess. We're just in the middle of not caring anymore." And I think this one's really interesting. It's just kind of like a surrender or giving up because you just kept trying and things are still hard. I think one thing that I heard from students a lot in the spring, and I'll be interested and I'm really listening for the fall, is this sense of being tired and exhausted, not really feeling the resilience anymore, kind of tired of that, but still care a lot about their education and care a lot about class, but the motivation is just not there. The ability to just keep pushing is just not there. It's not that there's not care, there's not interest or investment in classes or their education or their career. It's just hard to get up and go and do it. The Chronicle of Higher Education is a national, document or kind of news source that really does keep us all informed, or a finger on the pulse of what's happening in higher education. And nationally, that was reflected as well, as students just disconnecting and checking out and being stressed out. And so we know we're not alone. We know that we were feeling that here at UAB, and people are seeing that everywhere. So I really want to pause for just a second. And I know I've talked for several minutes and given y'all a lot of information about what you might have seen. I also want to thank folks that have been commenting so much in the chat about a lot of the different things that we've talked about, and everything from fear of work shutting down again, loss of income, so that financial burden, of course, exhaustion, and just handling that stress and just handling everything, worry of failure, anxiety related to not knowing, resonating on the quote of not wanting to be strong or judged on how well you can bounce back. Again, more fear of things shutting down and the changes that may happen, experiencing some of the symptoms that we described, particularly maybe, and I think this is a good point, like some of the physical symptoms. Some people may resonate more with that, or they might resonate more with cognitive or emotional or behavioral, but that those made sense. Grief, kind of echoing the grief. And there is so much grief. I'm reading through the comments. I hope y'all are able to as well. We weren't able to comfort each other. We certainly weren't able to comfort each other in the way that we were most wanting and needing, and that's that human intimacy and being together, and that made it even harder. So true. Being tired and not as resilient is very heavy. Absolutely, Brianna. More fear here, schoolwork, fear of failure, That's so stressful, and people identifying with that as well. Just how COVID changed your life and how stressful, again, that is. Trying to handle adult responsibilities, where you want to care, but you fully don't know fully how. Just recovering from COVID. So it's still happening, and that isolation is still very real. Thank you for sharing that. More fear of failure. A lot of folks connecting with that feeling of fear and of failure. Relating to the quote, "Come on in, I'm sorry about the mess." Just in the middle of not caring anymore, that resonated as well. Grief, unmotivated, exhausted, isolation, more isolation, more isolation. See a lot of common threads here. And I know a lot of you didn't comment, but my hunch is that you found something either in your peers' comments or in what I shared from what I've seen and heard that did resonate with you. So thank y'all for taking that time to check in. All right, I'm going to hop back on. So I want to shift gears a little bit and talk, it's heavy to think about, like, this is where we are. I always think it's important and say, let's name it, kind of name what it is, because once we name what it is, then we can figure out what to do about it. You may be familiar with the term kind of trauma-informed. There's trauma-informed care, there's trauma-informed teaching, and there is also trauma-informed learning. And it's a framework to think about how trauma and experiences of trauma impact our learning and behavior. It can completely impact how we learn and our ability to learn. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Experiencing a trauma can change the way a person perceives the world. A trauma can affect somebody in the sense that everything they thought they knew doesn't quite fit anymore. And so you've got to retrain your brain to see the world and understand the world in a different way. A trauma is really any kind of experience, event that threatens your well-being. A trauma is defined not by like the actual event that happens, but how somebody experiences that. So if you feel threatened, particularly if your life feels threatened, or you're witnessing a life-threatening or a well-being threatening event, then that can impact you like a trauma. Two people can experience the exact same thing and come away with it very differently, where one person may actually have longer term traumatic experiences, and somebody may be impacted more on the short term, but move forward relatively quickly. And this has a lot to do with a whole lot of different things that impact how somebody might experience that. Trauma-informed care is really just a framework to say that the way we behave and move through the world, and especially when it looks like it might not be as adaptive or be as healthy or maybe as functional as you would want it to be, or you think it should be, or you're not getting where you want to go in the way that you want to, that it could be related to trauma and how somebody sees and views the world. It has been an unsafe place before, and we have processes in our brain that happen before we even realize it that can signal a threat and cause us to behave in certain ways. And that's trauma-informed care or trauma-informed approach. Triggers are those things that just signal to us that something is not okay. The body, the mind set in a hole, and that's, we could go through some neuropsychology, but we're going to not do that lesson today. But our brain is like, all right, I got to go. I got to fight, flight, I got to freeze. I got to do something because things are not okay right now. And so we react to that. The Chronicle had a great article, and the one that I had shared that really featured some quotes that I thought were really explained some of what we were seeing and many students were sharing. This is from a faculty member that shared in the Chronicle. This is not UAB, against the national publication. This faculty member realized that students had suffered deaths in their families, financial insecurity, and other pandemic-related trauma, and that adds up to a lot of stress and exhaustion. And she was really clear. I mean, this was showing up in the classroom. This wasn't the counseling center where she was seeing it, but she was seeing it in how students were not learning the way that they had been. Students seem to have lost their sense of connection with the university and the university community and their sense of purpose in attending. It's almost like they just prefer to sit in their little cone of silence. And so there was just a real sense of withdrawal and disconnection, motivation, many of the things you all shared. Another quote that came was that this is from a student, that a student said they were determined to reclaim some sense of normalcy and began participating in clubs and activities again. We're really seeing that, for example, right now this fall. That's been helpful, but college in itself has felt harder. So think about that. How has that felt to you? I've heard a little bit of that already. We know we're just into the third week of classes, but things feel harder or faster paced or more intense or more expectations. There was an expectation to be back to normal, but what is the normal college experience? What is the normal grad school experience? Like, what is that? It's different now. So let's think about the effects of trauma on behavior. When somebody acts in a way that doesn't necessarily make sense, or somebody's easily startled, or maybe they are withdrawing, or they're showing any of those things on that chart that we talked about, they have outbursts or just respond in ways that may seem out of proportion, maybe with an event or a comment or something that's happening. Think about it instead of saying, like, what is wrong with them? The flip of a trauma-informed approach says, like, well, what happened to them? Could something have happened to them? What kind of trauma could be at play here? What are some triggers? What are ways that you could respond in a trauma-informed way? Which means, how can I respond with compassion and understanding that someone is probably doing the very best that they can, but something's going on. Secondary trauma and compassion fatigue. I include this because this is for real. This is when, you have been caring and support for, absorbing so much of other people's challenges and difficulties. And all of you are here for a mental health ambassadors training. And my hunch is because you care about others and you're a helper type and you want to help support other people. That's what mental health ambassadors do. And for folks that are helper types and want to support others, secondary trauma is a real thing, meaning that you experience your own sense of trauma because you have witnessed or helped somebody else, or you've just done it so much. So compassion fatigue can happen as a result of that. And it can affect, how you are in school, concentration, your emotions, wanting to withdraw, just that exhaustion, being jaded, pessimism, or even addictions, and particularly secretive behavior. So I say that to take care of yourself. And we really, really emphasize that as mental health ambassadors. We don't ever want someone who's serving as a mental health ambassador to experience it as a stress or a burden as soon as it does. That's the opposite of what we're here to do. We want to help people be able to have permission and the skills to manage your life so that you can have positive mental health, and self-care is huge in that. And so we make a point to emphasize that. A big part of that self-care is compassion, and particularly self-compassion. I've noticed that students are very quick to provide and offer compassion to each other, to their friends, to their peers, to other students, but are often really hard on themselves. They're not working hard enough, didn't do well enough, or should be doing better, or things should look differently, and they tend to beat themselves up. And so we really want to talk about that sense of self-compassion, which means treat yourself and talk to your own self-talk would be the same as you would say to somebody that you care about. Encouragement, affirmation, support, and care, understanding, grace, all of those things that you would offer a friend, you need to offer yourself. And Kristen Neff is somebody that we talk about a lot as some resources for that. We'll talk about that in a second. So some things that you can do, I'm just going to run through a few strategies in addition to self-compassion. One thing is to recognize, name, and acknowledge what's going on. We already talked about kind of naming the situation as it is. We got a lot going on. People are impacted. I do want to say that some people are impacted positively. Not everybody's impacted negatively. And honestly, people are impacted both positively and negatively. It's not an either or. So you need to name it, acknowledge it. I'm a big Harry Potter fan, but it's kind of, don't be afraid to say his name. Name what it is, because once you can name it, you can take away the fear and have some ability to address it. One of my favorite things to talk about, and I catch this in myself still all the time, it's so easy to say but or however or either or, and I want to encourage you to embrace the and, that we are complex human beings, that we are able to feel a lot of things at once, which is what also makes it feel very overwhelming. Our experiences of COVID, our emotions and reactions are not either or. They're not all positive or all negative or all this way or all that way. So I like this name or this graphic. You can be resilient and need a break. You can give it your all and need to back out and have boundaries. You can be independent and need others. You were confident and sure, and then things changed. So you can do both. You're kind and you have boundaries. Others have it worse and your pain is valid. I hear that one so much. Discounting your own struggle because others have it harder. Well, I don't really have a right to feel bad because I can think of 10 other people who are going through things much worse. Others do maybe do have it worse, and your pain is valid. You did your best, and now you know more. So you can do your best, but still not be perfect, and that is okay. So I encourage you to embrace the and to recognize the complexity of being human, and that it is not an either or black and white situation in our lives. And that can help you be more gentle with yourself. Thinking about the things that you can control and the things that you can't control is a very important strategy. Are you putting your energy into things that really, at the end of the day, you don't have the ability to change? The actions of others. You cannot change the past. You cannot impact the future. I mean, when I say you can't live in the future, you can only be in the here and now. And so what are you going to give your energy to now? What are you going to control, and then what is out of your control? So think about this diagram for you. I suggest to people, draw this diagram, draw a circle. What are the things in your control and what are the things out of your control? And then all the things that you have going on, what's inside your circle and what's outside of your circle, and where are you spending your energy? Are you spending your energy on the things you can control, or are you spending your energy trying to change things that really are not in your control? I have found the concept of radical acceptance to be a very powerful concept. Sometimes acceptance, we hear that and we think that we're just giving in, or we're giving up, or that you're okay with it, that the situation as it is, maybe I don't like my grades right now, or I don't love where I'm living right now, or I don't love how much I have to do right now, but it is what it is. Radical acceptance doesn't mean I like how it is, but it is a true acceptance of the reality of the here and now, and that you understand that and that you recognize that fully. And then that gives you freedom to do what you need to do to move forward. When you don't fully accept things how they are, then you're not able to fully move forward in a way that's going to be best for you. So radical acceptance, there's a lot of good stuff out there if you want to learn more about it, and find a way, like, is it accepting things that can help you really be more compassionate to yourself and move forward. Recognizing our shared humanity, having compassion for others as well, and kind of noticing yourself, you're critical, judgmental, angry, irritated. Usually that means something's going on. If you're not treating others or yourself the way that maybe you usually do, it's time to do a little self check-in. That can be a good indicator. With self-compassion, we give ourselves the same kindness and care we give to a good friend. There's a great YouTube video, and we'll have this presentation is recorded, but then we'll have the PowerPoint and different links available for you to look at if you want to learn more about any of these concepts. And this is a great video. We're not going to have time to watch it today. It's just 3 minutes. But she has a lot of different videos to talk more about how to, there is a science to self-compassion and years of research that she's done to show the impact of self-compassion on our mental health and well-being. Oh,
This practice is called the
this is funny. Okay, I don't know how to get back to it. Hold on. I'm going to check in. So, thoughts so far? Let's just check in on self-compassion. Do you find self-compassion easy or difficult? Is this something that you've thought about before? Treating how you treat yourselves or how you treat others, and as a practice of self-care, or anything else that we've talked about so far? I'd love for you to take a minute to comment. This looks like this is still playing. Okay, good. There are 3 aspects to self-compassion. The first is mindfulness. Mindfulness means like I'm naming what's going on and I'm fully aware of how I am and what's going on in the moment. I acknowledge my humanity, and then I actually form words and practice gestures of loving kindness. I'm just going to give you some high point examples since we don't have a lot of time to go deep into it. I want you to
This practice is called the
think about it. Okay, there we go. That was an example on her website. She has a self-compassion website, Kristen Neff does. It has a lot of different exercises, and they actually have some audio mindfulness exercises to guide you through the practice of self-compassion. One of the things that can be very powerful as well is supportive touch. So even just giving yourself a hug, I encourage you to try putting your hands on your chest right now. Sometimes people will do this, that there is an actual physiological response to our bodies feeling that warmth and feeling that connection, even if it's not from somebody else, as a way to provide your self-compassion. There's some different things that they have, like a self-compassion break, exploring through writing, if that's how you would like to do it. If it's a hard concept for you to grasp, there's some things that you can do to help you think about it in terms of yourself and what those words might look like, how to change your self-talk, how to do some journaling with that. And particularly if you are a caregiver, if you have others that you are responsible for taking care of and the toll that can take on you, she's got some really great things for self-compassion in those particular roles. All right, so I'm about to wrap up with resources, but before I do, what thoughts do you all have about some of these strategies to manage or kind of think about mental health and practice positive mental health? Are there any of them that you practice already or that were interesting to you or that resonated with you? And we talked about quite a few different things. I can run back through just to review some of those. Definitely self-compassion, right? Recognizing, naming, and acknowledging things so that it doesn't have power over you anymore, and you can do something about it. Embracing the yes and. Practicing and understanding what's in your control and out of your control. Concept of radical acceptance. Showing compassion to others as well as yourself. And we kind of mentioned a lot about self-compassion.
There's some great points in the chat too about journaling and how they've used that. And they're good thoughts and understanding what's in your control.
needed to hear about accepting the and knowing two things can be true at the same time. Absolutely. What's in your control and not in your control, being harsh. I tell you, students, I appreciate you sharing that, Haley. I have just seen so many students that are so harsh and hard on themselves and have expectations that are just so high that they're impossible, and that when they're not met, there is just this beating up of, I should have done better. Everybody else is doing better than me, and I should have done better. And it hurts my heart, but I do see students doing that a lot. So if you do that, know you're not alone. Everyone is struggling, even though we don't necessarily know it or see it. I do the hands over your heart exercise. Feel like self-compassion is a lot harder than feeling compassion for others. The supportive touch saying yes. I give myself relaxation, that's right, and focus. Learn how to journal instead of overthinking. That can help. Just getting it out can do a lot. Taking breaks, absolutely. Taking into consideration expectations that others put on you and how that impacts you as well. Well, so many comments too on the self-compassion. And so I encourage you to take a look at some of those other resources or watch some of our videos to read a little bit more about that and actually try some things to practice self-compassion. You can build that skill, like for real, build that skill as something that becomes more of a natural thought, or you catch, part of that's just catching the negative thoughts and trying to stop them and redirect them. Sleep. Yes. Thank you. Sleep is so huge. Important to talk to others, tell people how you're feeling. Absolutely. Another sleep. No kidding. So sleep affects everything. Well, thank y'all for sharing that and all those things. I'm gonna go through now and just share some of our resources. I've talked about the UAB Well app. I hope that all of you have downloaded this. If you haven't, please go to the App Store. It's both available for Apple and Android devices. When you download it, UAB gets none of your information. We set up the app and developed it intentionally that way. It's only on your device. And so you can have a build your own self-care plan. You can have a daily journal tracker of your habits or of how you're feeling. Then you can access all the it is a hub of mental health resources at UAB. You have an active calendar feed that's a live calendar feed of all the events, including mental health ambassador events, but also Active Minds and Grow and some of our other organizations. We have the Finding Calm section where you can access all the videos and audio scripts of the different mindfulness, breathing, meditation, yoga exercises. There's crisis information on there as well. So anything mental health, this is that hub. I encourage you to download that and explore that. We also have a really awesome platform that's called Together All. This is really out of students asking for a place to be able to connect to other students 24/7. And so some of our students have explained this is a lot like Discord. So if you've been on Discord before, but you can at any point in time connect to students all over the world actually and get support. You can also give support. So students like being able to get on there and being able to offer support to others. There's some creative things you can do with creating some art or just some different creative outlets. And then there's also some modules on there for some self-help if you want to just learn some things. TAO is also a free app for all of our students who are enrolled, and it has over 150 modules for any kind of topic around stress, anxiety, procrastination, sleep. Resiliency is on there too, and that you can do on your own 24/7 anytime and get some strategies for how to manage what's going on. We have self-assessments and screeners that are on our website if you want to learn more about what might be going on with you. We have students that complete these, and then we'll schedule an appointment with a counselor and talk to them about the results of what happened. We do have counseling appointments. We have a great team of counselors here to support students. We're open 8 to 5, and we now offer in-person, virtual, and phone appointments. You can book that appointment online through your patient portal. Just go to our website. You can do that through the app as well and schedule your first appointment with a counselor. You can also call or come back. All of this being said, I think the thing that's most important and something that we really value in mental health ambassadors is just taking care of yourself and each other, showing that we care, paying attention to how we're doing and saying something and doing something to support yourself through self-care and others. So with that, I want to open up for any questions or other comments that y'all might have. I know that's a lot of information. It's intended to be just a real broad kind of overview of what's going on in mental health and some strategies and then some specific UAB resources. So thank you all for all your engagement as well. Any questions? All right. Well, thank you. And we're going to shift gears Does this resonate? Is this what you've seen and experienced yourself or with your peers? Or what in particular resonates?
Can you guys